What's up, Amod? How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Thank you for asking. I'm glad you came on such short notice.
Yeah, happy to talk. It's been a while.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess we can just get right into it. I prepared a couple questions, but I wanted this one to be like more of a conversation just because like I haven't gotten to talk to you about this extensively. So I
Right.
guess we can begin by you just talking about earlier you mentioned you were doing like three different things. Could you just give like a quick synopsis on what those three things are?
Yeah, sure. So sort of as a high level overview, right now I work in private equity at a search fund. I have two startups. They're not really related in any way at all. One is a VR streaming service for long-term care facilities. So think like Netflix, but VR and for old people. And the other one, Gazelle Eco Solutions, is it's a software tool for cattle ranchers in Africa's Kalahari that sort of helps them combat ecological degradation. So two.
Okay. All right. Wow. So I guess we'll just break it down by like we can talk about one first and then go to the next like in the second half. But before we get into either of those, real quick for the listeners at home, Amo just finished his freshman year, and I'm sure everyone's wondering what could you possibly be doing in private equity as a freshman in college.
Right, right. That's you want me to answer that question?
Yeah, go.
Okay. Frankly, I would say I'm a little surprised myself. But besides that, sort of what happened is last year, it was the first semester of my freshman year. And I think sort of coming into college, like a lot of other freshmen, you don't really have a, pretty clear picture of, hey, this is what I want to do career pathwise. Obviously I was already self-employed by that point, and so that was there. But I felt that I wanted to get some kind of hands-on intensive finance experience. And I literally just one night I was on YouTube and I had some downtime and I came across a YouTube video called I think it was Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition. This is from Stanford GSB. And it just talked about search fund model. And I didn't really know much about this. I think like every finance bro out there probably generally understands, how private equity works, but not a lot of people really even know what a search fund is, yet alone how a search fund is.
Yeah.
And so kind of came across that model. I thought it was really cool. And then I sort of thought to myself, no one's going to hire, even just a fresh graduate, typically at, larger private equity firms and holding companies. Why are they going to hire a freshman in business school?
Mhm.
But I mean, by that point, I think that I've already, as an operator, as a small business owner, had some experience there. And so I thought, you know what, search funds are smaller machines. They can probably use skilled interns. And so I literally just did a bunch of digging through through a bunch of contacts into a CRM and
Mhm.
got in touch with like 60, 70 people probably, until someone finally emailed me back with my resume and said, hey, let's interview. Uh,
Mhm.
just sort of prepared for some, off the bat technicals, and then ended up landing a position at a search fund. So
Okay, I'm gonna fire a couple questions at you real quick. So
yeah, go
just
for it.
real quick answers. First, what did they ask technicals to you?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Second, what exactly are you doing for them?
So I currently lead a deal team on a leveraged buyout of a DOT compliance services company,
What does DOT stand for?
Department of Transportation.
Okay. And so what's your role in that team?
Sure. So the way it's kind of structured is in any search fund, it's very, time sensitive, right? Finding
Mhm.
a good company to acquire that fits typically a pretty specific investment criteria. And
Uh-huh.
so once we source a deal that fits that investment criteria and is sort of worth moving along the due diligence process for, we'll form multiple deal teams. And so in this
Yeah.
case, we have a live deal team of, anywhere between five and seven analysts. And so I pretty much lead that deal team. So I lead, the team through IOI, LOI, commercial due diligence, and sort of all the other steps that are part of the process.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're leading like a team of full-time analysts?
Some are full-time, most of them are part-time. Because I mean, a lot of them are also interns
And
from.
you're leading them?
Yeah, I ran.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, when did you start this position?
So I interviewed late November, December. I started the second week of January, I want to say, of this year.
Wow. Well, I should probably say congrats right here.
Yeah.
But that's really cool. And then the third question I had is, are you on payroll?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, crazy. That's actually insane. Well, congrats on that. That's really cool. And this firm based out of Austin, or are you just logging in remotely?
So I work remotely.
Mhm,
They were based out of Palo Alto, and then I
mhm.
think the principal of the firm is moved to Texas temporarily. So currently everyone is
Yeah,
remote.
I think that's a principle for a lot of people actually, because I mean, I assume Austin, Texas, so it's growing. So you're in the
Yeah.
right spot.
Yeah.
Also, are they like they're fully aware that you're like barely an adult?
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy. Oh, wow. Cool. Okay. Well, let's move on to your two startups.
Okay.
Which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about walkthrough because that chronologically comes first.
Okay, cool. So could you just give the quick breakdown? I know you gave one earlier, but like maybe add a little more detail and potentially how it actually started.
Yeah, sure. So I actually started my junior year of high school. So this
Mhm,
was going into 11th grade. And I have grandparents that live in long-term care. I had a couple close friends that also have grandparents that live in long-term care. And,
mhm,
and I always had an interest in sort of video game design, graphics, rendering, things like that. And so I'd go to South by Southwest, living in Austin,
mhm.
sort of every year, every chance that I got.
Yeah.
I remember that the summer before that was the first time that I sort of ever tried out VR. I'm
Mhm,
like, holy shit, this is pretty cool. And it was like I don't know, like a VR bike simulation or something like that.
mhm.
Fast forward a couple months, our high school had a business incubator program. And I was like, let me sign up for this because it seems fun. And I got a couple of my buddies to do it. And then we thought, well, wait a minute, it's not like just one person's grandma has this singular issue of social isolation. There's millions of seniors living in tens of thousands of skilled nursing facilities and independent living homes across the US.
Mhm,
What if instead of reinventing the wheel, we're just taking an existing technology but you know sort of modifying it for different user base, if you will. And so that's exactly what we did. I spent half a year, almost every free weekend I had,
mhm,
going into retirement homes, working and talking to activity directors, community owners, operators, the residents living in the communities, doing VR demos, figuring out, is there some kind of product market fit? Do people even want this? What kind of friction exists with, getting VR into retirement homes, and really
mhm.
just kind of getting a better understanding of sort of the potential users there. And then after I felt like I'd at least gotten some kind of validation, built out sort of an MVP, piloted it, made a mobile app, and beta had ran beta tests at
Mhm.
communities for a year and a half. We worked with a little over 5,000 clients, um, and yeah, that sort of captures some of the progress. And I mean, we got some traction along the way. We were actually in South by Southwest pitch this year, which was huge after getting rejected like 2 years
That's
in a row by South by
that's
Southwest.
amazing. And
Yeah,
I have a bunch of questions within that too.
yeah.
I think to begin with, did you just always have like a CS understanding to like, I don't even fully understand how like renders and all that stuff works. I assume there's a lot of like computer science involved.
So no and yes. No to having a prior CS understanding, and yes to there is some computer science involved. So
Mhm.
what I will emphasize is we have other team members, obviously. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
a lot of the development we do right now, for example, is inside of Unity. And so you
Mhm.
don't sort of need really a traditional CS background to learn Unity, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But I mean, I think a huge part of my role is also just leveraging and finding the right talent as well for our team. So
Yeah. So you said you started this in high school.
yeah.
So how did you find the right people to help like make these MVPs or these like version 1 and 2 if you're in
Yeah.
like
So
high school?
what I actually did was I was like, okay, I don't have the skills I need, so let me go find the people that do.
Mhm.
And as you probably know very well, Chinmay, in any high school, you've got a group of like try-hard CS kids that are looking to slap anything onto their resume.
Yeah.
So, find the right ones, give them some, NDAs and a contract and get them to work for you.
You gave
Um,
him an NDA?
yeah.
Wow.
And
Okay. Like,
so
did you just find it on the internet and you just like slapped your name on it, or like,
no,
were
so
you even like,
I
yeah?
actually worked at a law firm for 2
Oh my,
years.
you've done everything, dude.
Yeah,
Oh
so
my God.
I worked as a legal intern for half a year, and I worked as a paid legal assistant at a small business firm in Austin for a year and a half. And so
Okay.
we had a firm that we worked with that we had a pretty good relationship with. But what I did is I found a guy that was like 2 years older than me. He, was about to graduate from high school,
Mhm.
and super talented guy, extremely talented guy. Didn't even go to college, went straight to working for Firefly Aerospace.
Wow.
And so he sort of built out our initial prototype, initial
Mhm.
MVP, if you will. And then from there, I want to say there was about a year that we contracted a third-party firm that did some of our development. And then pretty recently just brought on a CTO and sort of brought all of the talent in-house.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Every time you say more, I have like more and more questions, but that's insane. I think the first thing, like you found this guy who's like a genius, didn't go to college. Like, how did you find him?
I think we had a class together, and it was really funny because
At
this
your
guy
high
would,
school?
like, yeah, in our high school.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
this guy
Crazy.
would like show up to school on a motorcycle with a leather jacket, and like the last thing you would like associate this person with is like nerdy CS kid. Like so,
Hmm.
and then I got a chance to talk to him one day. It must have been a group project or something like that.
Hmm.
And he just starts talking about things he likes, and I'm like, damn, this guy is like what I'm looking for. And
Yeah.
so I literally just sent him an email the next day. I'm like, look, I have an idea. I don't have the means to actually carry it out.
Hmm.
I've done my homework. I think there's a market here. Do you want to help me build this? And he was on board and worked with us for half a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was just another guy from your high school who had just coincidentally been like a group project with you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, cool. Um, okay, so we've got to, okay, I remember my next question. You said you had contracted a company.
Oh, yeah, that's correct.
At this point, I assume there's a certain level of funding involved.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
obviously these guys weren't working for me for free.
okay, yeah. So who was providing that funding?
So we actually haven't done a priced round yet. We've been pretty lucky to where everything has either been through non-dilutive government grants or pitch winnings and so on and so forth. So there isn't any one particular source.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was this your first, like, what was it? What was the first? The company's called WalkThru, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
WalkThru.
What was WalkThru's first like interaction with like funding from whoever? Like, could you walk through that and how you found it?
And with funding. Okay. So it was my junior year of high school, and one of our mentors actually, he works in the government space, and I was having a conversation with him, and I was like, well, I don't need that much capital up front to build this out, but eventually when I actually need to extend my runway, maybe I will, but too early for any VC to even take me seriously. And this guy goes, you need to leverage other people's money. There's plenty of just money sitting around in government that people don't know exists. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, what are the odds, right? And so I do a little bit of intensive Google searching, and I find out that nestled within Austin's telecommunications regulatory department, there's another department called GTOPS, or the Grant for Technology Opportunities.
Uh-huh.
And for anyone listening to this podcast, this is like pretty much a gold mine.
Mhm.
So keep listening. And they've been sitting on like millions of taxpayer dollars since like the early 2000s.
Uh-huh.
It's basically they give out sort of like these technology grants to sort of nonprofits and organizations in Austin. These range literally from as low as $1,000 all the way up to like probably $30,000, $40,000, maybe even more than that. So I mean, they're not huge grants, but they're not super tiny either. I mean, especially if you're a high schooler, you're like, wow, $30,000 is a lot of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
And yeah, like as long as you're improving technology access for some underprivileged community within Austin, you have a good chance of getting funded. And so we worked with a lot of retirement homes that were in underprivileged areas, and so generally had smaller activity budgets and didn't have as much access to sort of technology and things like that, like other retirement communities did.
Mhm.
And so that's how we sort of qualified for the GTOPS grant. So that was really our first interaction with getting any kind of outside funding.
Gotcha. That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's actually insane. So, and you said this one was 30,000, like the first like grant you got.
No, so it's not. So we didn't get 30,000. We got
Oh, okay.
like 3,000 probably.
Okay. Gotcha.
That,
Gotcha.
that's just probably the maximum you can get.
Okay. So when you got this 3,000, you was the entire 3,000 spent on like these contractors or what?
Probably want to say about half of that went to
Okay.
actually purchasing hardware, and then the other half went to uh, people we contracted.
Okay. Gotcha. I kind of want to shift the conversation to something that I always like. I kind of think about a lot when it comes to startups or honestly any kind of business venture I've seen people take or I've taken myself, which is like clients and marketing. I think marketing is a very underrated aspect of a business and honestly sometimes can be the most difficult.
Okay.
Could you talk a little bit about how WalkThru has marketing or is marketing and how you are able to secure your first clients and which part of that marketing process was the hardest?
Sure. So let me tell you a story that sort of answers your entire question. So we went in for a demo at a retirement community in North Austin. This was a long time ago. And I remember I'd called the activity director. I'd talked to her just a week before, and I was like, hey, I'm going to come in next Wednesday. I'll do some VR tours for your residents, and I'd love to sort of see their reactions and talk to them and things like that. And so I literally went into the community. I put up flyers, and it was like Wednesday night, 6 o'clock, meet in the atrium, virtual reality tours. It's going to be cool, whatever.
When you say community, are you talking about like the retirement home
Yeah,
community?
retirement home.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay.
And two people showed up, and they both asked me, what is VR? And I'm like, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
I did the same exact thing the week
Mhm.
after that, except now the poster went from come join us for a virtual reality tour to come tour the Louvre with us Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And two people turned to 10, and 10 turned to 20 and 30, and so on and so forth. So a lot of it really, I mean, at least with the demographic that I work with, just comes down to how you explain things. It's really all it comes down to.
Yeah.
Because, this is probably, I mean, seniors, it's like one of the most publicly valorized yet overlooked demographics, right? And so it's not that these folks can't use technology. There was an AAR people that came out a year or two ago, and it's something like 81% of seniors now above the age of 65 either have smartphones and or a tablet. And so they're a lot more tech savvy than we think they are. It's just that no one's willing to adapt their technology for seniors because people typically don't see that as a high growth target.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in my experience, that's really what it comes down to.
Okay. A bunch of logistical questions that I'm just gonna rapid fire real quick, just because I'm honestly curious. Like, how did you get access to the retirement homes? You just like called them up and asked them if you could?
So typically what I would do, and this was pre-COVID, I would literally drive to the retirement community. I'd get out. They'd be really confused because they're like, are you looking for volunteering hours? And I'm like, no, I want to talk to your activity director. And then they'd be like, all right. And then typically they'd let me in, and then I'd go talk to the activity director, and I'd basically interview them for say half an hour and just ask a bunch of questions. And then typically they'd be pretty interested, and they'd invite me back the following week, and I'd do a VR demo with some of the residents.
Okay, cool. The second question is, would you just have like, you just came with like 10 VR sets or what?
Yeah, I literally just showed up with a bunch of VR headsets too.
And like this was paid for just from your own pocket, or like this was from funding?
It was a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. Okay. And then the last question, which it's just like out of my own curiosity.
Okay.
Was vertigo ever a thing? Or I don't know if vertigo is the right thing, but just like dizziness when you put on like a VR headset for someone who's older, was that like a factor you
Oh,
considered, or
that's a
like
factor. Yeah.
a
100%.
liability when you walk into the
Yeah.
retirement home?
Yeah. So right now, only half of our users even use VR headsets. Because I mean, if we're dealing with folks that are like 85, 90 years old, maybe they have a history of photosensitivity, seizures, maybe just claustrophobia because they don't want to put on a big headset, which is totally understandable. So a lot of our content, probably like 200, maybe even 300 VR videos are actually stationary 360 tours. So a lot of folks will actually just watch it on like their tablets or iPads where they can still move around and interact with the environment around them, but it
Mm-hmm.
feels like they're in control of the tour.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So the like direction walkthrough is going with is it's an entertainment system for people who reside in retirement homes, correct?
That's correct. And sort of the thesis of what we do there is to combat social isolation among the elderly.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's you have really high levels of anxiety, depression, sort
Mhm.
of mental health issues stemming from social isolation with this demographic. And then it's sort of a two-pronged value add, right? Because for the users, the residents in the retirement communities, for them, it's a great way to sort of stay engaged and increase their cognitive stimulation and get them excited to actually, come out of their rooms and go
Mhm.
to community events. And then the sort of other value add for the actual customer, the actual people paying us to do this, the owners and operators of the retirement communities, the value add is really having something aside from just bingo and cable TV all day to keep their
Yeah.
residents
Yeah.
entertained. Yeah.
That sounds like a pretty good value add in my opinion. Um, okay, that's crazy. So would you say like throughout this process, I think for most listeners, including myself, honestly, the hardest part is like kind of getting like a foot stabilized with like a company and a project like this. And from what I'm understanding, or not only a company like this, but just honestly any company, from what I understand, like it seems like what really helped you, and I want you to speak on this a little more on whatever helped you the most with getting that stabilization as like a concrete business idea that you're pursuing, is like you really just put yourself out there. Like you literally drove up
Mhm.
to like whatever these retirement homes. Like what do you think helped you the most? Because I think like starting a business or like going from an idea to something that's
Mhm.
actually like tangible or like something that's like actually a little bit more shaped is like the hardest part, and I think where a lot of people give
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
What
So
was like what really helped you through that?
I will say, I think there's a very simple and clean answer to that. Um, what a lot of people don't understand with startups is you're building two things. You're building a product and you're building a company.
Mhm.
And as much as people want to deny it, those are two very different things. And I see, sort of the two polar ends of this all the time, whether it be in the Austin ecosystem or here in Atlanta or literally wherever it is. Um, you've got like smart computer science kids, engineers, they'll come up with a cool product. Like I literally met a guy a few days ago. He's got a gumball machine that collects biometric data. Another guy that makes virtual waifus in the metaverse. And then another dude that makes I don't even know, robots that work for home health services companies to make sure people are taking their prescriptions on time. And they've got cool technology. Like all of it totally has commercialization potential. Maybe it requires them to pivot a little bit. Maybe they need to think and look at it the other way. But you sort of, when you think about it just from a product side, and that's sort of what happens to a lot of STEM minded folks, is they come up with a cool product, they come up with a cool idea. They're like, wow, everyone's going to want to buy this. Who, I don't know. Where, I don't know. For how much, I don't know, because I haven't done any of the customer discovery. I haven't done any of that due diligence. I just have a cool product. And then the pigeonhole that they sort of go into is, their thinking should be, let me start with the user experience that I want to deliver, and then take a few steps back and work my way back from there. Not, I have this cool technology now, let me go figure out how to market it, because that's going to fail.
Mhm.
The other flip side of this is someone comes up with a great business idea, but then actually lacks the product. And so, I won't go off on a tangent there, but basically, I think a lot of people generally fall into one of these two categories. And then until you realize that original vision for your product may not actually match up with your business model, because the business model is going to be just as iterative as the actual development process of writing hundreds or thousands of lines of code and trying to get something to work.
Yeah.
So until people understand that these are two different things that they're concurrently building and they may not follow the same path, I think that people will sort of run into a lot of the same roadblocks.
Okay. And so what was your approach with like doing this? Like, was it just like you would spend 50% of your time building a product or facilitating the construction of a product, and then the other 50 with like honing the business model, or like what did that look like for you?
So, I mean, for me, it changed, right? At a really early stage, I did put more time into product. Over time, that's changed, right? Now I have
Yeah,
a
of course.
CTO, people that are sort of managing product full-time in-house. So that's less of my concern, and I'm focused more on sort of the client side of things. But you know, it really changes over time. Like when we initially started, I thought this was just going to be sort of a generic SaaS play where, you know, individual folks in retirement homes will pay for a subscription and then they'll sort of use it on their own. And what I quickly learned is, you know, well, wait a minute, retirement home is a very blanket term. You have independent living homes, you have assisted living homes, you have memory care facilities, you have many different levels of care that are being offered. And, you know, the persona of the person actually using it is going to be very different, you know, even just retirement home to retirement home. So that's not going to work. And, you know, surprisingly, out of all the communities that we work with, none of them actually have this use case. In every single instance, it's folks getting together in big groups, and they'll do big group themed events where maybe everyone goes to the, I don't know, Venice, Italy together in VR, and they'll do something like that. So then we're like, okay, well, wait a minute, maybe we need to do, you know, some kind of a package subscription for retirement homes. And then it raises a new question of, well, okay, are we going to be able to make as much money? If not, then do we need to sort of adopt a different type of contract where we're having communities prepay and then it turns into deferred revenue? Like, what is sort of the approach here, right? So the model was it changed all the time, as it should. And it maybe will look different 6 months from now. I don't know. And so I would say right now, I probably spend a little bit more time just, you know, on the client side of things than I do on development. Not saying I don't spend time on development, but that relationship has definitely evolved over time.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the way I wanted to actually talk about this was I did want to get a lot of those like beginning stage questions out of the way, because as I mentioned previously, that can be like really difficult. And even for myself, it is like very hard to navigate all these different like facets of starting or creating a legitimate business venture. But now I kind of want to transition into like the growth like stage of like from not from 0 to 1. So we just covered like I don't know if I'm right in like gauging it like this, but it's like seems like 0 to 1 we just covered. Now I want to talk about like 1 to X. How like what was it like where did you see the most growth in the company happen? Like what did you do that caused like I think I heard earlier that it was like 5,000 clients you're working with. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so where do you think like that first, like, what do you think caused that to grow? And like, were there any factors you saw that were like accelerating that number higher and higher quicker than like other efforts that you were taking?
Yeah, so a lot of that comes down to kind of understanding the key to user retention. Because I think that when you're a really early stage company, your primary concern is how do I get that first customer? Because getting that first customer is really damn difficult. And so, you know, if you get the first customer, like, you know, like good hats off to you, like good job. But then, you know, every customer you get after that, it's not your second to first customer and your third, you know, first customer and your fourth first customer. That's your second, third, and fourth customer. And now you're not worried about getting the new first customer. You're worried about retaining the first customer. That's how you get scalable growth. And so now it turns into a question of not just acquisition, but retention. And so understanding not just our acquisition cost, but our customer lifetime value and where we get that from was really important. And so, you know, things that we learned were, you know, like we're young, right? Like I don't live in a retirement home. And so when I think of VR and when a lot of other people our age think of VR, we think of, you know, video games and racing games, maybe, going on a VR roller coaster, something
Mhm.
insane and absurd like that.
Yeah.
People want to be in a Zen garden.
Mhm.
They want to go to, like, I don't know, like the Vatican, like,
Yeah.
not things that I want to do.
Yeah.
So I think that also connects to something else, which is that customer discovery is always an ongoing process. We made that mistake many times ourselves, where we thought, okay, you know what, I spent half a year literally just going into retirement homes. That means I'm an expert on retirement homes now. I'm not.
Mhm.
So much has changed, like in COVID, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole industry flipped on its head. And so it's always an ongoing process, but so long as the customer discovery process does not cease to exist, you will always have a good understanding of not just like micro level trends, maybe within a retirement home, but maybe where the industry is headed as a whole. And that has implications, right? Maybe it means that our pricing model changes. Maybe it means
Mhm.
that the frequency at which I'm updating my content library changes based on like user data that I'm getting. And all of these things together allow me to create a better experience for an individual user so that I can maximize that retention. And I think that once we sort of adopted that mentality towards, okay, hey, we want to not just create a cool platform and deploy it, we want to be able to scale this. And that means, really making sure that we're delivering a high fidelity experience. I think that's when we sort of got maybe the meat of our traction.
Okay. Okay. Was that growth that you're talking about with those second, third, fourth customers still based on like you actually going to retirement homes or somehow contacting them and pitching it, or what did it, or like has it been word of mouth, or what's that been like the marketing strategy now?
So most of it has been us going in
Mhm.
person. Whether it's me or another team member going in and providing a demo. And so I think that in this particular industry, you have to kind of go in person. Like you have
Mhm.
to make
Yeah.
relations with these communities and actually meet some of the residents there. Because no matter how cool of a technology you make, I think that no matter what retirement home you go to, if you just show up and you're like, let me hook you all up with VR, you're going to get a lot of
Yeah.
really confused and concerned stares.
Mhm.
So yeah, it is in person. Some of it has been word of mouth. Like you'd be surprised sometimes. Folks in retirement homes watch a lot of cable TV, and
Mhm.
so this has literally happened probably 3 times, maybe 4 times, where I've cold called a community. I sort of give them my elevator pitch and sort of explain what I'm doing, and I'm trying to set up that initial call. And they're like, "Oh, you're the VR kid from TV," and I'm like, "Yeah, I guess that's me."
What TV channel were they seeing you on?
I don't know, maybe KXAN, CBS,
Okay, gotcha.
few others. Yeah.
You've just like, was this you reaching out to KXN and being like, hey, I want to talk about this cool thing I started, or were they reaching out to you?
Most of them reached out to us.
Okay,
Maybe
cool.
one of them we may have reached out to a few years
What
ago.
like channel did you put yourself on, or not channel like literally, but like what mediums did you put yourself on that made you visible to like reporters?
I mean, the most recent example would be South by Southwest Pitch, right? I mean, these are
Okay,
some of the
yeah.
most, top cream of the crop companies in their
Mhm.
respective categories in the US. And so I didn't really have to do anything. I just kind of walked out and people kind of come up to you. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I think that's probably the first time that it ever happened to me. And so I didn't even I don't even know what I was supposed to do. Just like, all
No,
right, I
that's
don't know how to
amazing.
answer your questions. But in the past, I mean, like we've emailed reporters before and tried to get a little bit of buzz and attention. I mean, does it help us get customers? I don't know, maybe not.
Mhm.
But I think that maybe more recently it's sort of been the other way around where we have media companies come to us.
Gotcha. Okay, that's insane. When you mentioned 5,000 clients, is that like, are you referring to 5,000 independent like retirement homes, or is this like
I'm
5,000
referring,
people across all like actual users?
I'm talking about users across.
Okay, gotcha. Um, is your like is when you got like onboard people on, like is that process kind of like really simple where you show or have a couple of demos or whatever with the users, and then you have someone at the retirement home come in and like take the reins, or what does that look like?
So generally what happens is, before they even sign a contract with us, we'll
Mhm.
obviously provide a product demo and give them a feel of what the technology looks like. From there, we work pretty closely with activity directors and sort of staff in retirement homes, and so they sort of get the reins there to manage the system for their community based on however they want to use it for different events if they choose to do that. And so generally we'll just train a staff member or two that generally manages and sets up these types of events, and then from there they'll sort of take it on.
Gotcha. I kind of want to talk about like I want to continue talking about like the opportunities you found, and I think I just, by the way, completely separate. I think I made the decision here to like only talk about WalkThru in this episode, and potentially if you're free, because I don't want to like straddle between both of them, and then I don't do it justice for either one. So right now I'll just keep talking
that's
about.
a good idea. We can,
Yeah.
save
Okay.
Hurry for a different episode.
Yeah, no, it's been a really interesting conversation, so I don't want to just like abruptly be like, okay, let's move on to the other startup. But I'm wondering, like, okay, first of all, what is like the oldest? How many people are on the team for WalkThru?
That's a good question that I don't even know the answer to off the top of my head.
Like range?
We're, I don't know, 7, 8 probably.
7, 8. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What's like? I think earlier you mentioned about how important it is to source the right people and have the right people on the team. Right. Just out of curiosity, what is like? Is this all like college students, or are we talking like there's adults that y'all have on payroll?
No, it's not all college students. I mean, we have actual adults, industry professionals. I mean, obviously the founders in this case are students and interns and, like students on our team.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we work with actual adults. So that's
so I'm wondering like how many I'm kind of trying to understand like in terms of industry experience and stuff like that, how is like, obviously, I mean, I'm not sure exactly at this point how many years of experience you have, because I feel like it's a lot, but is there any like, have you seen any like dissonance between you who's like maybe had like 4 or 5 years of experience, I think maybe, and then someone else, I don't know who like has the most experience on your team in the actual industry or like just work experience in general, but like how did you like learn to interact with people who have a bunch of experience, and like how were you on the same page, or like how'd you learn to be on that same pace of like understanding how like business works and stuff like that?
I mean, okay, I'd say that's a pretty broad question because it kind of covers a lot of things, but I'll do my best to answer that. With respect to understanding the industry, I mean, some sort of that is doing your own homework, but a lot of our team members have that experience. So for example, our Alzheimer's educator that we have, she actually worked at a retirement home that we used to demo with, and then she retired and moved out of that job, and loved her product and her mission so much that she joined our team full time, and she's got 20-25 years of industry experience, and so she sort of brings a wealth of that into her team. And then we have a lot of experienced operators that are on our team, that are on our advisory board. And so, it's not just me sort of, feeding off of my own brain. This is me picking at other people's brains too. So there's a lot of great talent that we've been able to work with. But to answer sort of the last part of your question there too, a lot of that is just being willing to learn, right?
Yeah.
It's not like I woke up 11th grade of high school and had all this business acumen and a clear action plan. It was the exact opposite of that. So a lot of it is just being willing to learn and being willing to accept a certain level of risk in order to get to that point.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I want to discuss like just organization, both mentally, physically, with all these like different initiatives you have. How many hours would you say like a week you're spending? Like, what's the split with like your job in private equity, WalkThru, and then I'm forgetting the name of the third initiative, but what's that split like?
Solutions, yeah. It varies, to be honest with you. I would probably say on average I work 90, 95-hour work weeks.
Wow.
Sometimes a lot more, sometimes not even close. So pretty busy weeks. I sleep
Yeah.
every day and a half. Um, the split depends. In private equity position right now, I probably put in 40-45 hours.
Mhm.
And then just based on where things are right now, generally it's the, other 40 hours, 40-50 hours are sort of split pretty evenly, at least right
Yeah.
now. Sometimes it changes. Like this past week, I was in San Diego for some work for Gazelle, and that was pretty much my primary focus. But the reason I have that degree of flexibility is because this isn't a one-man operation. At WalkThru, we've got a super talented, great team that we've put together. At Gazelle, same thing. So it's not like if I temporarily shift my focus one day or another, from one venture to the other, it's not like shit's gonna hit the fan. Uh,
Mhm.
so yeah.
Gotcha. Um, so when you also, I forgot to mention, you're also like in a 4-year university, which probably also adds
That's
a bunch
true.
of time. Are you usually getting like 8 hours of sleep, or what does that look like?
No, no. So that is true. I forget that I'm a student sometimes. Thanks for
Uh-huh.
mentioning that. Yeah. So I'm at UT, double major. I study history actually in finance.
Cool.
Um, I mean, I go to the classes that are required for attendance.
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
and so keep it at a minimal. I mean, I'm not doing terrible. I've still
Mhm.
got my whatever 4.0, and staying on top of my
This guy, you're religious. um,
class.
okay. What
Put it
type of
up.
history? What type of history are you learning?
I'm not specialized in
Oh,
anything
it's
right
just
now.
general.
It's just general.
Okay. Is
So
this just like a hobby thing? Like you just genuinely you're interested?
yeah, I mean, I added a history major just because I could. I wanted.
Okay.
Like I enjoy history. I enjoy reading. I enjoy writing, and for me,
Mhm.
it's sort of like a brain break, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of like sleep, during the semester is probably when I'm the busiest because I'm sort of doing school and then doing all of these other things at the side. Generally, I do like work sprints. I like to divide everything into sprints because I think that if you have a lot of really big overarching goals, that's great, but then it's very easy to burn out very quickly.
Yeah.
So I tend to sort of divide everything into small digestible sprints. And by small, I mean
Mhm.
small, small. I mean like 1 to 2 hour type things,
Okay.
not like 1 to 2 day type things.
Yeah.
I'll dedicate each day for achieving a particular goal.
Mhm.
So maybe Monday to Tuesday, I'm just getting one particular thing done for WalkThru. Sleep
Okay.
half the day, repeat same process, so on and so forth.
Mhm. Okay. Interesting. I wanna dive into that a little more.
Okay.
So with sprints, like, is this like something like, do you ever have like periods where you're just like going into deep work, like it'll be like 7 hours on one thing, or is it like, are you like very stuck to this like 2 hours, like so you kind of take everything and like try to improve the work like together?
There have. So there have been times where I'm at like her office space and
Mhm.
I like don't leave for 2 days straight. Like that's happened many times.
Wow.
And so yeah, I mean you get engrossed into it sometimes.
Mhm. Are you ever concerned about like mental health at all?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean I think it's something that you tend to really easily sort of forget about or put on the
Mhm.
back burner. And so I take breaks from time to time where it's like, hey, I'm doing nothing for 2 to 3 days and I'm literally just sleeping or going to the park or walking my dog or eating ice cream or
Mhm.
spending quality time with friends and family. So I think that it's sort of put in a lot of work, but then because the beauty of dictating your own hours is you also make your own weekends. And so
Mhm.
sometimes, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the weekend, and that's great.
Gotcha. Um, do you like, have you, it's clear that you have like this innate passion, I think, to kind of build like systems that operate and like things like that, like where you're actually, you take an idea and you see it come to like to real life. And I think sometimes like people say that they do have that, and I guess people have like an excitement for that, but very little people actually can do what you're doing. I mean, I think not or staying in an office space for 2 days in a row is a little bit extreme. and I don't expect many people to have that. But like, was this something you think you developed or is just innate? Because I know a lot of people like to say they want to start a business or maybe genuinely want to, but never actually go through. Like, were there any things that you did to like consistently keep you like in a state of like working at it and chipping at it, or was it really just like a pure
I mean,
drive?
it's not like I work out of a cubicle. I mean, when your office consists of a beanbag and unlimited soda, it's kind of hard not to hate it. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that like, okay, look, it's a lot of work and sometimes it sucks, but you have to actually enjoy what you're doing. You have
Yeah.
to actually have fun doing that. Like, I talk about, oh, I have long work hours or I sleep very little and I make it sound like it's terrible, but I actually enjoy my work. Like every
Mhm.
time I go into a retirement home, every time I see a smile on someone's face because they saw someplace that they served during like, I don't know, wartime or went on a honeymoon 40
Mhm.
years ago or whatever it is, like that makes me happy. That gives me a sense of fulfillment. Like it's very
Yeah.
purpose and mission oriented and driven.
Mhm.
And I think that sure, we all get lost in the weeds sometimes, but I think that, if it's something that you're actually passionate about, that you have the skill set and the time and the means to actually execute on, then yeah, by all means do that because you'll probably be a little bit more successful doing that than something you hate, uh,
Mhm.
unless you're just fantastic at it. So, it depends, but at least I personally really enjoy what I do. So,
Mhm. Do
I love
you did you like find mentors in the process that you've gotten a bunch of like insight from, or just like you've had a great relationship with? And like if so, like how do you like, was it just like organic or did you actually go out and seek like mentors?
So I actually did get a lot of mentors along the process. I won't go into any crazy detail, but one of our chairman of our board, Brian, he started off as just a mentor.
Mhm.
This guy would come talk to me once a week when I was in high school. I'd ask him questions. When I was on the verge of giving up, he kind of pushed me not to and was like, "No, I guarantee you there's some grandma out there that's gonna like it." I'm like, "All right." And so, this guy has had plenty of industry experience that I never had. And so, that was great. But I mean, besides from, just that, I mean, I've worked with all sorts of talented lawyers and developers and operators. I mean, I've had a, chance to pitch to and learn from, everyone from just students to like, VPs at Apple, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. So what
right.
with like this one mentor you mentioned, was this just through the school? Like I think like, I mean, even for myself, I think recently I've thought more and more about mentors. And I think there's kind of, it's like a two-way approach where you have to be working on something and you have to show like there's a drive, but then you also have to like go out and maybe like seek it. Like what, like was this like given to you by chance, or was it you going out and like reaching out to people?
It was a mix of both. I would say that most mentors that I've had a really good relationship with have been people that, sort of either came to me or uh, I got through like like a warm introduction from someone else. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I guess the last part, because this has been definitely longer than most of mine, but I mean, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah.
I just like, would you say, like, I mean, personally, I've been trying to read and I have been reading a lot more over like the last year. Is that something you do, or is it kind of like, where do you like when you learn? I know you mentioned like the Stanford grad school speech earlier, but like it's clear that you also to like execute things like this, like 3 projects, whatever, private equity, school, 2 majors, 4.0, whatever it is. Like, I mean, it's like without a doubt, I mean, you have to know that there's a lot of like also natural talent and intellectual curiosity that you have. But then there's also a part, definitely a huge part of you that's like effort and like going out and learning things. Like, was there a place you found, a resource you found where you've like learned a lot and you think has like shaped your interest in learning, or like whether that's through books or like a specific author or whatever it is?
Right.
Like, could you kind of talk about that?
Yeah. I'll happy to answer that question. So I actually don't read books, period. Like I don't remember the last time I like picked up a physical book and read it. To be
Uh,
honest with you, I don't read
that's
books.
crazy.
Now,
Yeah.
I don't think books are bad. Read your books. I'm sure you'll learn a lot. Um, I just don't. And it's not because I don't have time or I don't like reading books. Like, I'm sure if I did, I'd love it.
Mhm.
I just don't. I mean, I do read. Like, I know I mentioned the Stanford GSD video on entrepreneurship through acquisition. Like, I was just reading something yesterday. The Yale School of Management just last month, dropped a new sort of case write up. It's I
Mhm.
think it's called On the Nature of Due Diligence in a Search Fund Acquisition. And I mean, I was reading that for work, but I mean, I thought it was an interesting read. I still learned from it, and it was
Yeah.
good. So I mean, I read things, but I read less of books and more of like magazines and case studies and things like
Mhm.
that. More tangible things that are sort of quick reads, digestible, and give me some kind of a quick takeaway.
Yeah.
But to really answer your question, yeah, for me, that's always been the people I surround myself by. Um, I think UT is a great ecosystem. Austin is a great ecosystem here. I've had the pleasure of working with, at this point, I've probably seen like, I don't know, dozens and dozens of insanely talented both individuals and really high impact companies, all the way from just an idea to, companies doing their, Series B.
Mhm.
And that is what keeps me going because I see other people that are probably putting in more hours than I do, that are literally just you know you know working on some kind of a mission or building a cool product or making some kind of an impact, and that's what keeps me going because I see other people doing things. And I mean, it's not like, oh, and then I think I have to go, work twice as hard. It's not like that.
Mhm.
It's not toxic in that sense, but it's more of positive reinforcement because
Okay.
you see the things
Yeah.
people are doing around you, and that sort of gives you the energy or motivation that you need.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you in terms of like environment, and even I've heard like I guess we've well, I don't know if everyone's heard it, but like just like how you're like an average of like whatever the 5 people you spend the most time with and stuff like that. And I'm really glad you mentioned that. Um, like how do you, of course, naturally as you're growing your businesses, you're growing your ventures, you're definitely like interacting with really high like functioning people in Austin and other cities. But like to someone who, or maybe like when you first started out, or like someone who, let's say, goes to the University of Texas or another university, or maybe isn't even in university, like what would you tell them to do to improve like that environment and naturally start like a snowball effect of like growing your mind and like growing your expanding your network and like the conversations you have?
I think it's where you choose to spend your time. And rather than giving a really abstract answer, I'll give you a more like maybe Austin or like UT specific answer. Literally just go to events. Like I think that I remember before I came to UT, I was like, let me kind of figure out what the ecosystem here looks like. And I don't know, UT probably has like 40, 50, 60 different quote unquote entrepreneurship organizations. Most
Yeah.
of them are just full of crap. They don't do
Mhm.
anything. It's
Yeah.
mostly just a bunch of kids that want to slap, you know, labels on
President.
each other's
Yeah.
resume,
Yeah.
scratch each other's backs, and do a rain dance or something like that.
Yeah.
But there are really good orgs at UT. They're great places to meet, smart kids. And I think it's just, not being afraid to just reach out to other people.
Mhm.
Like I'll have people just like message me sometimes and be like, hey, I've got this idea. Where do I get my first, I don't know, $1,000 from to just build it out?
Mhm.
And we'll work together and we'll find that for you. So, just it can be as small as that or, just anything. So I think just not hesitating to reach out to other people that you see around you and then just plugging yourself into the ecosystem that exists.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially with like a school like UT. I just feel like there's so many resources. I mean, like there's just so many people to meet.
Right.
And I agree with that. Is there like have you stayed involved with like UT related events, or is it just like been something that you like can't really do anymore because you're so busy?
Um, I'm not really, frankly, I'm not that involved in any UT
Mhm.
like entrepreneurship orgs.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the folks over at Herb Kelleher. I know the folks over at Texas Venture Labs. I know people at Capital Factory, Longhorn Startup Lab, Momentum. Like I know people, running all of these orgs, and they're all super talented and they're doing really cool things. But you have limited bandwidth. But I mean, I have worked with some orgs.
Gotcha.
So a little mix, but probably not as involved as I'd like to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, as I think about it more with like environment, I think there is like a snowball effect of like once you have like whatever, a group of 3 or 4 people who align with you, whatever it is, whether that's entrepreneurship or something else, they also know other people and it becomes like a network like effect type of situation where you're in contact with a bunch of people. I think that like at least for now, I'm 100% sure even like 10 minutes after this conversation's over, I'll have like 100 more questions. But this has been a very long conversation, and I don't want to.
Happy to save it for a part
Yeah,
two.
there might be like 10 more parts, but no, I'm just kidding.
And I mean, Gazelle is really a whole different story.
Yeah,
So happy to chat with
like
you
it
about that at
is.
some point as well.
Okay, well, Amod, if you have any like parting advice, give it, and then if you want to put any plugs, put that too. Like now's your chance. Hopefully, I really hope listeners are listening to this point because I think this has been like an incredibly insightful conversation. But now's your chance.
Sure. Shout out to Blake Reed. That's my co-founder. So if you're listening, what's up? And I mean, check us out, WalkThru.live. Parting advice, I mean, I'll try and make this a little useful. If you go to UT, you have a concept, you have an MVP, you've built out some kind of an idea, maybe you even have some traction. It's okay if you're pre-revenue. Apply to Longhorn Startup Lab at Capital Factory with Josh Bear. They'll take in 10 or so handpicked UT companies each semester. They'll give you $1,000 off the bat, AWS credits, access to mentors, and an entire co-working space. And it's a fantastic resource that is literally half a mile away from your campus. So go use it. Don't sit in your room like a bum and think about all the things that you want to do. There's plenty of resources right around you. So go use them.
That's brilliant advice. And I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Amod. I will talk to you soon again.